In 1903, in a sleepy little village in England, a kid named Tolkien was out messing around with his friends like any carefree kid would. When he got home, there was a priest waiting for him. His mom introduced the guy as Father Francis, who had come to whisk them off to Birmingham. Apparently, the church there was going to hook them up for housing, food, school fees, the whole deal. Life had been tough since Tolkien's dad passed away, and Father Francis, an old pal of his late father, stepped in to help out. Tolkien wasn't too thrilled about leaving his village, but it's not like he had a choice. So with a heavy heart, he packed up his stuff, and off they went. That night, when they rolled into Birmingham, his mom tried to cheer up Tolkien and his brother Hilary. She told them about this novel she'd read where the characters found two ways out of poverty, either marrying rich or stumbling on treasure. But for her, the real treasure wasn't always gold or jewels. It was friends who had one's back, kept one grounded, and helped one grow. She hoped her boys would someday find their own treasures, and her words hit home in a way Tolkien wouldn't forget. Fast forward a few years, and tragedy struck. One day, Tolkien came home from school only to find his mom just sitting there, not moving. It hit him like a ton of bricks. She was gone. The loss shattered Tolkien and Hilary, leaving them grappling with a sadness they couldn't quite shake. A few weeks after the funeral, Father Francis showed up with another big change. He took the boys to see Mrs. Faulkner, a noblewoman with a soft spot for helping others. Father Francis pitched the idea of her adopting Tolkien and Hilary, explaining how smart the kids were and how they deserved a shot at a top-tier education, not just the regular schools the church could afford. After a bit of back and forth, Mrs. Faulkner agreed to take them in. Life with Mrs. Faulkner wasn't so bad, and the boys soon found themselves in an elite school. But things weren't all sunshine and rainbows. One afternoon in class, Tolkien's literature book got swiped by a troublemaker named Robert. No biggie. Tolkien had studied the night before and finished the passage from memory like a boss. But Robert wasn't done being a pain. During sports lessons, he kept up his antics, picking on Tolkien for no reason. It all boiled over into a full-on scrap, and both of them ended up in the principal's office. Before they went in, Robert told Tolkien to zip it and let him handle things. Once inside, the principal lit into Robert, tearing him down and comparing him to Tolkien, who was, let's face it, the teacher's pet. Feeling bad for Robert, Tolkien tried to defend him, but it didn't stop the principal's rant. Things got even messier when the principal bluntly told Robert to get his act together and try being more like Tolkien. After leaving the office, Robert was fuming. He grumbled under his breath, brushing off Tolkien's attempts to calm him down. But then, Robert dropped a bombshell. It turned out the principal was his dad. Tolkien was floored. The next morning, Tolkien was tidying up his room when he heard something that stopped him in his tracks. A piano melody, soft and beautiful, echoing through the house. Curious, he followed the sound and found the source. A stunning girl playing the piano with effortless grace. Her name was Edith, Mrs. Faulkner's newest foster child. Tolkien stood there, absolutely smitten, watching her with awe. And just like that, his story gained a new and unexpected chapter. One sunny afternoon in the school library, Robert was up to his usual antics. He approached Tolkien and insisted they hang out after school. Tolkien, being his practical self, declined, explaining that he didn't have any money to spare. But Robert wasn't taking no for an answer. He dragged Tolkien along anyway, and the duo met up with Robert's two friends, Geoffrey and Christopher. The four of them sat down together, and soon enough they started opening up about their lives. Robert revealed his dream of becoming a painter, though his father was dead set against it. Geoffrey shared his love for poetry, lamenting how his parents wanted him chained to an office job instead. Christopher spoke about his passion for music and how he longed to be a musician, but his family expected him to carry on the family business. Caught up in the conversation, Tolkien joined in, sharing how his mother used to read him fairy tales as a child. He confessed that he had always loved imagining fantastical worlds and aspired to create a story, but not just any story, instead something extraordinary, a masterpiece that would stand the test of time. That evening, back at Mrs. Faulkner's house, Tolkien mustered up the courage to strike up a conversation with Edith. Over some strawberry jam snacks, Edith opened up about her longing to explore the world beyond the confines of the house and to experience its beauty firsthand. Touched by her words, Tolkien decided then and there to start saving up, hoping to take Edith out one day to fulfill her wish. The next day, Tolkien found himself at the cafe again with his new crew. As he buried his nose in a book, Robert couldn't resist asking what he was so engrossed in. Tolkien explained that the book told the tale of a female god named Hel, who thrived on war and sent cowardly knights to Helheimr, her fiery underworld. Fascinated, Robert seized the moment to rally the group into rebellion, encouraging them to defy their parents' expectations and chase their passions. Inspired by this newfound courage, Robert cracked a joke by proposing to a waitress in front of everyone, making the whole cafe roar with laughter. That's when they came up with the idea to form a club, Tea Club and Barovian Society, or TCBS for short. The club's one rule was to meet regularly at the cafe after school and share their latest creative work. Years flew by, and Tolkien's days were filled with joy. He spent his time with his three best friends at TCBS and often took Edith on long walks, soaking in the world's beauty. In 1911, Tolkien graduated from high school. To celebrate, he invited Edith out to dinner at a nice restaurant. During the meal, he proudly revealed that he had created an entirely new language, blending Latin, English, German, and French. Edith was amazed, her admiration for him shining through. By now, their closeness made it clear that the two were more than just friends. Later that evening, Tolkien introduced Edith to his trio of friends at their favorite cafe. Robert, Geoffrey, and Christopher lit up, eagerly chatting with Edith. At first, Tolkien enjoyed seeing her connect with them, but soon, jealousy crept in as he watched them grow a little too close to her for his liking. When he suggested it was time to leave, Edith, still caught up in the conversation, grew annoyed. She stormed off, leaving Tolkien behind, confused and hurt. The following day, the TCBS gang gathered at Robert's house for a sleepover, taking advantage of his parents being out. As usual, they spent the evening showcasing their latest works, fueling their creative spirits. Later that night, while goofing around with a game of billiards, they froze at the sound of Robert's father returning unexpectedly. In a frenzy, they scrambled to hide their things. When Robert's father entered, he sternly instructed everyone to go home. But Tolkien, Geoffrey, and Christopher weren't having it. They goaded Robert into standing up to his father, insisting he fight for his wishes. Gathering his courage, Robert convinced his father to let them stay, and for the first time, he experienced the thrill of standing up for himself. The sleepover carried on, filled with laughter and newfound confidence. The next day, Tolkien, still feeling guilty about his spat with Edith, decided to make it up to her by taking her to the opera. But when they arrived at the theater, his excitement quickly turned into embarrassment. His money wasn't enough for the tickets. They were turned away, but Tolkien, not one to give up easily, hatched a plan. He led Edith to the costume room, hoping to sneak into the performance. Unfortunately, the door to the main theater was locked. Defeated and ashamed, Tolkien apologized, ready to leave. But just as they turned to go, the sound of opera music filled the air. Edith, enchanted by the melody, began to dance, pulling Tolkien into the moment. They used the props around them and waltzed to the music, turning a disappointing evening into something magical. A few days later, Tolkien had a heavy conversation with Father Francis, who informed him that Mrs. Faulkner was no longer willing to cover his college tuition. She felt that as an adult, Tolkien should take responsibility for his own expenses. The news was a blow, especially since Tolkien had recently failed the Oxford scholarship exam, a failure rooted in his choice to spend the evening before the exam walking with Edith instead of studying. Father Francis offered an alternative solution. He promised to pay for Tolkien's college tuition at Oxford, but only under one condition, that Tolkien had to leave Edith behind. Francis believed it wasn't the right time for love and warned that a distracted focus on education could lead to a miserable life. Torn but understanding the gravity of the situation, Tolkien reluctantly agreed to end things with Edith. 2 years into his studies at Oxford, Tolkien's struggles continued. He confided in his friends during a TCBS hangout, telling them how his poor grades threatened his future in his department. His friends, seeing his potential, were quick to encourage him. They even offered to pitch in financially if Tolkien decided to switch departments. But Tolkien refused. He didn't want to become a burden to them. Things took a turn when Tolkien received a letter from Edith informing him of her engagement. The news hit him hard. That night, consumed by his emotions, Tolkien drowned his sorrows in alcohol. In his drunken haze, he shouted incoherent words in his invented language outside the dormitory, startling everyone nearby. The next morning, still feeling the sting of his outburst, Tolkien joined Geoffrey to watch a fencing match. During the event, a professor approached him, referencing his strange behavior the night before. Embarrassed, Tolkien apologized profusely, admitting that his drunken state had led him to speak nonsensically in his made-up language. The professor, intrigued rather than upset, introduced himself as the head of the philosophy department. He shared his thoughts on the power and significance of language, sparking Tolkien's interest. Later that afternoon, during a TCBS gathering, Tolkien shared his concerns about being expelled from his department. His friends suggested he transfer to the philosophy department and reach out to the professor for a scholarship, noting his apparent fascination with Tolkien's creative linguistic abilities. Encouraged, Tolkien decided to take their advice. The following morning, Tolkien mustered the courage to meet the professor. As expected, the professor was deeply interested in Tolkien's unique talent for creating languages. He offered Tolkien a scholarship, provided he could write 5,000 words in his constructed language. Driven and determined, Tolkien accepted the challenge and completed the assignment with flying colors. By mid-1913, Tolkien officially transitioned to the philosophy department. Years later, Tolkien graduated from Oxford, brimming with hope and ambition for the future. But just as his dreams seemed within reach, his world was shattered. During a campus moment when Tolkien was presenting his story to the professor, chaos erupted. Students rushed in, shouting that England had declared war against Germany. All young men were now required to enlist in military service, forcing Tolkien's aspirations to take a back seat. 1 year later, Tolkien and his TCBS friends officially became soldiers. On the eve of their deployment, the four friends joined their fellow British troops for a lively farewell party. Amid the celebration, Tolkien, Geoffrey, Christopher, and Robert posed for a photograph together, capturing their bond and the gravity of the moment. After the party, Tolkien stepped outside and found Edith waiting for him. They went for a walk, and Edith revealed that she had broken off her engagement, admitting she still loved him. Relieved and filled with newfound hope, Tolkien summoned the courage to express his feelings for her, asking her to consider a future with him. Their connection reignited as they shared a kiss, marking a poignant farewell before Tolkien departed for war. 4 months into his service in France, Tolkien was stationed on the Western Front. One night, he sat in a trench, reading a letter from Geoffrey's mother. She expressed concern about her son's whereabouts, having heard nothing from him for weeks. Despite battling a high fever, Tolkien's worry for Geoffrey propelled him to take action. Determined to find his friend, Tolkien set off toward the Eastern Front. Another soldier, noticing Tolkien's frailty, decided to accompany him, ensuring he wouldn't have to face the journey alone. The next morning, Tolkien reached the Eastern Front, his body weak but his determination unshaken. As he tried to rest, chaos erupted. The enemy launched a sudden, brutal attack. Tolkien scrambled to the safety of a trench, but the sight of countless fallen British soldiers left him paralyzed with terror. His legs gave way beneath him. Unable to walk, he turned to his loyal companion, asking for help in finding Geoffrey. The soldier, seeing Tolkien's dire state, covered him with his own jacket to keep him warm before setting out on the grim task. Tolkien waited anxiously, the minutes dragging on like hours. At long last, his friend returned with news of Geoffrey's whereabouts. Despite his fever worsening and his body teetering on the edge of collapse, Tolkien insisted on pressing forward. When he finally reached Geoffrey's unit and inquired with the commander, he was met with devastating news. Geoffrey had already advanced to the front lines. Tolkien's world blurred with fear and exhaustion, but he stubbornly pushed onward. As Tolkien traversed the battlefield, the unrelenting carnage he witnessed overwhelmed him. The screams, the smoke, the bodies. It was too much. His strength gave out, and he collapsed, unconscious. When he finally woke, he was no longer in France. He found himself in a hospital back in England, Edith at his bedside. Tears streamed down her face as she hugged him tightly, explaining that he had been unconscious for a week. Groggy but panicked, Tolkien's first question was about Geoffrey. Edith's expression told him everything. With a trembling voice, she told him that Geoffrey had died in battle, and the heartbreak didn't stop there. Robert had also been killed, while Christopher had survived but was left scarred with PTSD. The weight of the news crushed Tolkien, leaving him utterly devastated. A week later, as Tolkien began to recover, Father Francis came to visit him in the hospital. He brought with him a letter, Geoffrey's final words, written the day before he ventured to the front lines. In the letter, Geoffrey expressed his last wish for Tolkien to publish the poetry he had poured his heart into. As Tolkien read his friend's heartfelt plea, tears flowed freely. The loss of Geoffrey, coupled with his unfulfilled wish, cut Tolkien to the core. Years rolled by, and Tolkien rebuilt his life. He became a lecturer at Oxford University, found solace in his marriage to Edith, and they started a family together. But something was missing. His once boundless ambition and creativity had withered away. One evening, Edith gently confronted him, telling him how much she missed the vibrant, driven Tolkien she had once known. Reluctantly, Tolkien revealed the truth. He confessed that the reason he had stopped writing was his unresolved guilt. He felt that pursuing his dreams, while Jeffrey's wish remained unrealized, would be a betrayal to his three closest friends. Since the war, he hadn't been able to bring himself to reconnect with Jeffrey's family. Edith listened carefully and offered him a perspective he hadn't considered. She encouraged him to fulfill Jeffrey's final request, believing it might help ease his burden and reignite his passion for life. Though hesitant, Tolkien decided to take the first step. The following day, Tolkien gathered his courage and went to meet Jeffrey's mother at the cafe where the TCBS had once gathered. Sitting across from her, he shared stories of Jeffrey, Robert, and Christopher, painting a vivid picture of their unbreakable bond. With a heavy heart, he presented her with Jeffrey's book of poetry, explaining that this was his dearest friend's last wish. As Jeffrey's mother held the book close, her tears mingled with her gratitude. She thanked Tolkien for being there for her son and for keeping his memory alive. By 1930, Tolkien's life had taken on new meaning. He and Edith had 4 lively children who filled their days with joy and chaos. One bright morning, Tolkien decided to take his family to visit his childhood hometown. As they strolled through the familiar streets, Tolkien recounted the stories his mother had once told him, the tales of a poor orphan boy's quest for treasure. His children hung on to his every word, their imaginations ignited by the wonder of his storytelling. The trip left Tolkien feeling refreshed, his heart lighter than it had been in years. When the family returned home, he finally felt ready to create again. Sitting at his desk, he began weaving an extraordinary tale of adventure. That story would eventually become The Hobbit, the masterpiece that reignited his dreams and honored the memory of his friends.